If you're over 60 and you've been doing everything right, eating less, walking more, cutting back on sugar, but that belly fat just won't move, I want you to know something important. It is not your fault, and more importantly, it is not hopeless. Here's what almost no one explains to you. The belly fat that accumulates after age 60 is not the same belly fat you might have struggled with in your 40s. It's a different kind. It's called visceral fat. And it sits deep inside your abdomen, wrapping around your organs, your liver, your kidneys, your heart, quietly driving inflammation, disrupting your blood sugar, and raising your risk for heart disease and type 2 diabetes. The frustrating part is that the usual advice, eat less, move more, barely touches it. Because after 60, your body has changed, your hormones have shifted, your metabolism has slowed, and the standard playbook simply doesn't apply anymore. But here's the good news. There are specific foods, 8 of them, that work with the biology of an aging body. Foods that can reduce inflammation, support fat metabolism, regulate blood sugar, and help your body finally release that stubborn, visceral fat. And today I'm going to walk you through every single one. Stay with me, because food number 4 is the one I recommend most to my patients, and it may be the one you're not eating nearly enough of. And over more than 2 decades working with older adults, I've seen the same pattern repeat itself hundreds of times. A person comes in their 67, maybe 72, and they're frustrated. They've cut their portions, they've given up dessert, they've been walking every day, but the belly just keeps growing, and no one has taken the time to actually explain why. So let me explain it now. When you're young, your body has relatively high levels of estrogen for women and testosterone for men. These hormones help regulate where fat gets stored. They tend to keep fat in the hips, the thighs, the periphery of the body. But after 60, estrogen and testosterone decline significantly. And when that happens, fat storage patterns shift. Fat starts migrating inward to the abdomen, and specifically to the visceral region, which is the deep fat packed around your internal organs. Now here's why this matters. Visceral fat is not passive. It's metabolically active. It secretes hormones and chemical signals that worsen insulin resistance, drive chronic inflammation, elevate blood pressure, and increase your risk of cardiovascular disease. It's been called, and this is in the medical literature, a metabolic time bomb. But what's also true, and this is the part most people never hear, is that visceral fat is actually more responsive to dietary changes than subcutaneous fat. That's the fat you can pinch under your skin. Visceral fat, the dangerous kind, is the kind your body is most willing to burn first when you give it the right inputs. And that's exactly what these 8 foods are designed to do. Before I get into the first food, do me a quick favor. Drop your age in the comments below, just your age, nothing else needed. I read every single comment, and it helps me know who I'm talking to, so I can keep making videos that are truly specific to where you are in life. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I post new videos every week focused specifically on the health of people over 60. No generic advice. No one-size-fits-all protocols. Just what actually works for older adults. Alright, let's get into it. The first food on this list is fatty fish, and I mean wild-caught salmon, sardines, mackerel, or trout. Now I know what. You might be thinking, fish, that's the advice? But stay with me, because what fatty fish does inside your body after age 60 is something most people dramatically underestimate. The key is the omega-3 fatty acids, specifically EPA and DHA. These are long-chain polyunsaturated fats that your body cannot make on its own. You have to eat them. First, they reduce the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines. Those are chemical signals in your blood that drive chronic, low-grade inflammation, and chronic inflammation is one of the key drivers of visceral fat accumulation. Think of inflammation as the soil that visceral fat grows in. Remove the inflammation and you make it much harder for that fat to take root. Second, omega-3s improve insulin sensitivity. They help your cells respond to insulin the way they're supposed to, letting glucose in for energy instead of leaving it circulating in your blood, where it eventually gets stored as fat. For anyone over 60 with even slightly elevated blood sugar, this is a significant benefit. Third, omega-3 fatty acids have been shown to activate fat oxidation pathways in the liver. In simple terms, they help your liver burn fat more efficiently rather than store it. A study published in the International Journal of Obesity found that older adults who consumed fatty fish at least twice per week showed significantly greater reductions in waist circumference compared to those who ate lean fish or no fish at all. Waist circumference is one of the most reliable markers of visceral fat. In real life, that means eating salmon 2 to 3 times per week, grilled, baked, or poached, not fried. A portion of about 4 to 6 ounces per serving is ideal. If you genuinely can't stand fish, high-quality fish oil supplements can partially substitute, but the whole food is always preferable. Now I want you to pay close attention to food number 2, because this is one most people are not getting nearly enough of. Food number 2 is legumes, and I mean lentils, chickpeas, black beans, and kidney beans. These are one of the most underrated foods in the world of senior health. I think they get overlooked because they seem too simple, too ordinary. But the science behind what legumes do for visceral fat after 60 is genuinely impressive. Legumes are extraordinarily high in soluble fiber, and soluble fiber does something very specific inside your gut. It forms a gel-like substance that slows the movement of food through your digestive tract. What that means in practice is a much slower, more gradual release of glucose into your bloodstream. No spike, no crash, no surge of insulin that triggers fat storage. But here's the part most doctors don't take the time to explain. Soluble fiber feeds your gut bacteria, specifically the beneficial strains like Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus. And when these bacteria are well fed, they produce short-chain fatty acids, particularly one called butyrate, that reduce gut inflammation and actually improve how your fat cells respond to metabolic signals. In short, a healthy gut microbiome helps your body burn fat more effectively. Legumes are also protein-rich, which matters enormously for muscle maintenance, and I'll say more about why muscle matters for belly fat in just a moment. Practically speaking, aim for half a cup to 1 cup of legumes per day. Add them to soups, stews, salads, or just as a side dish. Canned versions are perfectly fine, just rinse them well to reduce sodium. If you're new to legumes and worried about digestive discomfort, start small, a 1/4 cup per day, and build up gradually over 2 weeks. Your gut bacteria will adapt. Food number 3 is avocado. And this one tends to surprise people who've spent decades being afraid of fat. For a long time, the mainstream advice told us that fat makes you fat. Avoid fat, cut fat, that was the message. But that advice, which dominated for decades, was deeply misleading, and for older adults especially, it caused real harm. Here's the truth. Not all fats behave the same way in your body. Avocados are rich in monounsaturated fat, specifically oleic acid, the same primary fat found in olive oil, and oleic acid has been shown in multiple studies to reduce the inflammatory signals that promote visceral fat storage. But what makes avocado especially powerful is the combination it delivers. You get the monounsaturated fat, yes, but you also get a substantial dose of potassium, magnesium, B vitamins, and nearly 10 grams of fiber per avocado. That fiber slows digestion and blunts the blood sugar response to whatever else you eat at the same meal. It's like adding a natural break to your glucose curve. I had a patient, Helen, 74, from Arizona, who came to me frustrated. Her fasting blood sugar had been creeping up for 2 years, and her belly was slowly expanding despite her best efforts. We made several changes to her diet, but one of the simplest was adding half an avocado to her lunch every day. Within 8 weeks, her fasting glucose had dropped by 11 points, and her waist measurement had come down by nearly an inch. That's not a miracle, that's just what happens when the body gets the right inputs. Half an avocado per day is a realistic target on eggs in the morning, sliced over a salad, mashed onto whole grain toast, or eaten plain with a little sea salt. And here we are, food number 4. This is the one I mentioned at the very start, the food I recommend most consistently to my patients over 60. And it's probably the simplest food on this entire list. Leafy greens: spinach, kale, Swiss chard, arugula, collard greens. I know you might have expected something more exotic, but let me tell you what happens inside the body of an older adult when they consistently eat 1 to 2 cups of leafy greens per day, because the effects are profound. First, leafy greens are among the highest volume, lowest calorie foods that exist. You can eat an enormous amount of them without triggering fat storage, and that volume creates satiety. It fills your stomach and sends signals to your brain that you've eaten enough. Second, they are loaded with magnesium, and magnesium is a mineral that roughly 70% of adults over 60 are not getting enough of. Why does that matter? Because magnesium plays a critical role in insulin signaling. When your cells have adequate magnesium, they respond to insulin properly. When they don't, insulin resistance worsens, and insulin resistance is the most direct driver of visceral fat accumulation. Third, leafy greens contain compounds called glucosinolates found especially in kale, arugula, and cabbage that support liver detoxification. And your liver is central to fat metabolism. When the liver is functioning efficiently, it breaks down and clears fat from your body. When it's overburdened, it stores fat instead. Supporting liver function with these compounds genuinely changes the fat metabolism equation. Fourth, leafy greens are rich in folate, vitamin K, and antioxidants that combat the chronic inflammation that drives visceral fat. The goal is 2 cups per day, 1 at lunch, 1 at dinner. raw, steamed, or sautéed in olive oil with garlic. All of those are excellent. The form matters less than the consistency. If you are on a blood thinner like warfarin, talk to your doctor before dramatically increasing your vitamin K intake, as that is a genuine interaction worth discussing. Now this next one is where the science gets genuinely interesting. Food, or rather, drink number 5 is green tea. Green tea has been consumed for thousands of years in Asian cultures, and researchers have been studying its effects on metabolism and body composition for decades. But what most people don't know is that the active compounds in green tea called catechins, specifically one called EG, have a very specific and documented effect on visceral fat. EG inhibits an enzyme called COMT, which is responsible for breaking down norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is a signaling molecule that tells your fat cells to release stored fat. By slowing its breakdown, EG effectively extends the fat-releasing signal. In simple terms, it keeps your fat cells in a fat-burning mode for longer. On top of that, catechins have been shown to reduce the expression of genes involved in fat cell formation, particularly in the abdominal region. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition found that participants who consumed green tea extract over 12 weeks had significantly greater reductions in abdominal fat compared to a placebo group with no other changes to their diet or exercise. The practical recommendation is 3 to 4 cups of green tea per day, ideally without sugar. If you don't love the taste, matcha, which is powdered green tea, contains even higher concentrations of catechins and can be blended into smoothies or warm oat milk for a latte-like drink. One important note for anyone over 60, green tea does contain caffeine. If you're sensitive to caffeine or have trouble sleeping, enjoy your green tea in the morning and early afternoon, and switch to decaffeinated versions after PM. For years, eggs were the enemy. You were told to avoid the yolk, limit yourself to 2 or 3 a week, and worry about cholesterol. That advice, based on now outdated science, caused a great deal of unnecessary fear. And for older adults, it may have contributed to protein deficiency and muscle loss that made belly fat worse, not better. Here's what the current evidence actually shows. Eggs are one of the highest quality protein sources available. A single large egg contains about 6 grams of complete protein, meaning it delivers all the essential amino acids your body needs for muscle maintenance and repair. And protein is the single most important macronutrient for preserving and building muscle after 60. Why does muscle matter for belly fat? Because muscle is metabolically active tissue. Muscle burns calories even at rest. Every pound of muscle on your body is essentially a small fat-burning engine running 24 hours a day. When we lose muscle, which happens progressively after 60, in a process called sarcopenia, our resting metabolic rate drops. We burn fewer calories and fat accumulates more easily, especially viscerally. Eggs help protect against that decline. They stimulate muscle protein synthesis, the process by which your body repairs and builds muscle fibers. And they do it in a very bioavailable, easily absorbed form that older digestive systems handle well. Beyond protein, egg yolks contain choline, which supports liver function and fat metabolism. They contain lutein and zeaxanthin for eye health. And the dietary cholesterol in eggs has, in multiple large studies, shown minimal effect on blood cholesterol in most people. The recommendation is 2 to 3 eggs per day for most adults over 60. Scrambled, poached, hard-boiled, or in an omelet with leafy greens, which brings together 2 of our top 8 foods in one meal. Food number 7 is one that I genuinely enjoy telling people about because it's delicious and it works. Berries, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, blackberries. Here's what makes berries unique among fruits for anyone dealing with visceral fat. Most fruits, when eaten in large quantities, can cause blood sugar spikes due to their natural sugar content. But berries are the exception. They have a low glycemic index. They contain relatively little sugar compared to other fruits. And they are extraordinarily high in a class of plant compounds called anthocyanins and flavonoids. These compounds reduce oxidative stress, the cellular damage caused by free radicals that accelerates aging and promotes inflammation. They improve insulin signaling at the cellular level, and they have been shown to suppress the activity of enzymes involved in fat cell enlargement. A landmark study from the University of Michigan found that a blueberry-enriched diet significantly reduced abdominal fat, with follow-up human studies suggesting similar effects in people with metabolic syndrome. What's also important is that berries provide this powerful antioxidant effect at very low caloric cost. A full cup of blueberries is only about 85 calories. 1 cup per day of any berry combination is ideal. Frozen berries are just as effective as fresh, sometimes more so, since they're frozen at peak ripeness when nutrient concentration is highest. Don't let the fresh versus frozen debate stop you from eating them. And we've arrived at food number 8, the final one, and in some ways the most foundational of all, extra virgin olive oil. I want to be very specific here, not vegetable oil, not canola oil, not an olive oil blend. Extra virgin olive oil, cold pressed, unrefined, ideally in a dark glass bottle. Here's why it matters so much after 60. The primary fat in extra virgin olive oil is oleic acid, the same monounsaturated fat we talked about in avocado. But what makes high-quality extra virgin olive oil exceptional is its polyphenol content, specifically a compound called oleocanthal. Oleocanthal has been shown to inhibit the same inflammatory enzymes COX-1 and COX-2 that are targeted by ibuprofen. It works as a natural anti-inflammatory at a molecular level. And because chronic inflammation is the soil visceral fat grows in, reducing that inflammatory burden is one of the most effective long-term strategies for reducing abdominal fat. On top of that, olive oil has been shown to improve adiponectin levels. Adiponectin is a hormone secreted by fat cells that promotes fat burning and improves insulin sensitivity. People with more visceral fat tend to have lower adiponectin levels, and olive oil helps raise them. The PREDIMED trial, one of the largest and most respected dietary intervention studies ever conducted, found that participants who followed a Mediterranean-style diet supplemented with extra virgin olive oil had significantly greater reductions in waist circumference and cardiovascular risk markers compared to a low-fat diet group. The practical target is 2 to 3 tablespoons per day. Drizzle it over salads, use it for low-heat cooking, add it to soups after cooking, or dip whole grain bread in it. Do not use it for high-heat frying, as extreme heat degrades both the flavor and the beneficial polyphenols. Now, before I close, I want to take 2 minutes to talk about the things that make these foods work even better. Because food is the foundation, but it's not the whole picture. First, daily walking. A walk of 20 to 30 minutes per day has been shown in multiple studies to specifically target visceral fat more so than many other forms of exercise. It doesn't need to be fast, it needs to be consistent. Morning walks after breakfast are particularly effective for blood sugar regulation. Second, resistance training. Even light resistance work, bodyweight exercises, resistance bands, light weights 2 to 3 times per week helps preserve and build muscle. And as we discussed, more muscle means a higher resting metabolic rate, which means your body burns more fat even when you're at rest. Research has shown measurable muscle growth in adults in their 80s who begin resistance training, so it is never too late to start. Third, sleep. Poor sleep raises cortisol, your primary stress hormone. Elevated cortisol is one of the most direct signals your body receives to store fat in the abdominal region. 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep per night is not optional if you're serious about reducing visceral fat. It's where a significant portion of the metabolic repair happens. Fourth, hydration. Dehydration is remarkably common in adults over 60, and it slows fat metabolism. Think of it like a river running low. When the river is full and flowing, it moves sediment and clears debris. When it's low, things get stuck. Aim for 6 to 8 glasses of water per day.